answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, over the weekend on the Sunday Talkies, NRA execs were present and accounted for. Face the Nation, the NRA's Wayne LaPierre squared off against Senator Difey on the issue of new law being promulgated by Democrats to ban the so-called bump stocks. Here's Wayne LaPierre on just the nature of the politicization of the Vegas massacre.
There are menaces out there every day. People want to be able to protect themselves. That's why they support this freedom. All the elites that have been speaking out this past week, they all want to protect themselves. They all protect themselves with armed security. I mean, they criticize the NRA. You want to talk about irresponsible use of firearms? The number one person teaching irresponsible use of firearms is all these elites' employer. The Hollywood, television, gaming industry. We spend millions teaching responsible use of firearms. They make billions every single day, John, teaching irresponsible use of firearms. They're so hypocritical, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, the hypocrisy abounds, there's no question. LaPierre on the question, though, of whether or not the NRA supports the ban on bump stocks that's been proposed.
If I'm a Republican and I'm a fan of the NRA, do I want to say no or yes to legislation that does this?
I think you want to tell ATF to do its job. It's an interpretive issue, and they need to get the job done. But not let Dianne Feinstein, which is what she wants to do, turn this all into some Christmas tree on the Hill where she brings all her anti-gun circus she's been trying to do for years into this.
Yeah, Chris Cox, the executive director of the NRA, said similar on Chris Wallace's program, Fox News Sunday. And to Wayne LaPierre's point, here's what Dianne Feinstein said, also on Face the Nation, about whether any law would have prevented what happened in Vegas.
Could there have been any law passed that would have stopped him?
No. He passed background checks registering for handguns and other weapons on multiple occasions.
So if no law could have prevented the Vegas massacre, then why are we talking about a new gun law? We put that question to our friend John Lott, Jr., noted criminologist, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, and author of The War on Guns, as well as More Guns, Less Crime. John, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's nice to talk to you again.
So what about that? How did you assess the answers from Cox and LaPierre about this being an interpretive issue, the bump stocks? This is for ATF to make an administrative decision if there's something that, like a bump stock, that can make a semi-auto function like an auto. And also their second point, that the whole talk of banning this or banning that misses the mark.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess part of the irony is that the bump stocks were originally approved at the beginning of the Obama administration. Look, I have no problem banning those types of devices. I would only caution that it's not going to produce any types of miracles that people think. You have a relatively simple device that somebody with a machine shop is going to be able to go and put together. And, it's kind of like the discussions we've been having in the past about magazine bans, banning magazines more than 10 bullets, or New York tried to ban them for more than 7 bullets. And that is, a magazine, for example, is a box with a spring in it. I've seen people be able to put one together in like 2 minutes with a machine press. And so, it'd be nice to be able to go and say that these types of rules are going to stop somebody from doing something. But here in Las Vegas, we had a guy who wired his car with ammonium nitrate. Mm-hmm. He also had other flammable explosives apparently inside the car that were apparently very strong. He had, all we know, is a lot of homemade bombs that they discovered in his home.
But specifically,
so this guy, obviously had some technical abilities to be able to go and do things. And I'm not sure how you stop somebody who has those types of skill from making, other weapons to go and kill people, whether they be the parts that he would need for a gun or these other explosives.
But logistically speaking, if he had not had the bump stocks in his hotel room and using them, don't you think more people would be alive?
Look, as I say, I'm happy to ban them. All I'm saying is this guy had a fair amount of technical skills. And the notion that he couldn't have made, even if you banned him, even if you had different administrative decisions made during the Obama administration on these, he could have made them himself. These are not things that require greater technical skill than it did for him to go and make the types of bombs that apparently he had made his car into, or that he had at his home.
Well, and the issue too is, look, I mean, much like you can read books or watch videos on bomb making online, you can also watch videos that provide instruction on doing homemade bump stocks. So, I mean, this is the thing, and here's why the Dems, even with DiFi conceding that no law would have prevented this, here's what the Dems are actually doing, and Wayne LaPierre is right to look ahead. They want to use the bump stock, as leverage to get more gun bans that they want. This is what's happening at the state level in Illinois. Mike Scott reporting it on his newscast. Marty Moylan, this hack Dem state rep from the north suburbs, trying to seize on people's emotions, and he's talking about banning bump stocks at the state level in Illinois, but also, quote unquote, assault weapons, as Marty Moylan determines them. So this is an opportunity for Dems to bust through the door now that it's ajar over this bump stock issue.
Yeah, look, after this case, as we've seen others, we had people within a few hours of the attack calling for a whole range of gun control laws that they had no idea whether they were relevant or not for this attack. You had many people, for example, calling for background checks on private transfers of guns. And yet, and they've done that after other ones. President Obama, in each of his talks he gave on mass public shootings, that was the one law he called for in each case. But yet, it was irrelevant to this. It was irrelevant to each and every one of the attacks that President Obama talked about during his administration. It would be irrelevant for attacks before him. But they have a list of types of laws they want to have that wouldn't have had anything to do with the attacks that they're using to motivate these laws that are there. And if you want to go and ban some semi-automatic guns based on how they look, which is the assault weapons ban that they keep pushing, rather than, at least you can talk about banning all semi-automatic guns. At least there would be some logic to that, rather than just some, style, military style is the key word there, which basically refers to how they look on the outside.
Not how they function, right.
Right. And there'd be some logic there, but I know they don't want to go there because Americans know they benefit in terms of their own defense from having semi-automatics. There's three types of guns. There's manually loaded guns, where one pull the trigger, you have to physically put another bullet in the chamber yourself. Semi-automatic, which is one pull the trigger, bullet fires, automatically reloads, one pull the trigger, one bullet out, and so on. Or fully auto, which you pull the trigger, and as long as it's pressed, bullets are going to be coming out. And I can give you lots of cases where civilians have to fire more than one shot. And if you miss on your first shot, or you fire a warning shot, or you have more than one person attacking you, people may not have the luxury of going and taking the time to manually reload their gun in order to be able to defend themselves.
Well, what's the history, though, of the bump stocks, and why were they legalized in the first place?
Well, you've had bump stock type devices available for a while, but the actual ones that were out for sale basically started during the Obama administration, and the Obama administration approved them as not being an automatic weapon, not being something that one pull of the trigger would allow you to go and fire many rounds. And so, one could argue there was an interpretive issue on that part, and they decided to interpret it in a particular way.
There's a good piece in the Washington Post last week from Leah Labrisco, who used to write for the 538 blog. And a number of the writers over at 538 have actually looked at the data and done some international comparisons and trying to figure out, where is the center of gravity with respect to gun crime and what are policies that could reduce gun-related deaths versus those that have no discernible effect. And she basically, the title of the piece is jarring in and of itself. She says, I used to think gun control was the answer. My research told me it wasn't. She goes through silencers and quote-unquote assault weapons and actually looks at the where the large number of gun deaths are. 1 in 5 were young men aged 15 to 35 killed in homicides, most likely to die at the hands of other young men related to gang activity. Last notable groups, in addition to those who commit suicide, which is 2/3 of gun-related deaths, 1,700 women murdered per year, usually as the result of domestic violence. Far more people were killed in these ways than in mass shooting incidents, but few of the popularly floated policies were tailored to serve them. She essentially makes the point, you need to look at categories of crime and see what is sensible policy with respect to, the more likely victims of gun-related crime, including suicide victims, if you will, rather than kind of these mass popular emotional appeals that you see from politicians.
Yeah, look, my views have changed tremendously over time looking at guns. Before I started doing research for this, I was probably pretty much in the middle of the debate on this stuff. A lot of the regulations, on first pass seemed reasonable to me. But what I've learned over time is some of what she's learned, and that is when you pass these laws, you have to be careful who they're primarily affecting. And too often, you end up having regulations that affect the most law-abiding citizens. So when Chicago, for example, banned handguns, murder rates, violent crime rates went up, just like they did in D.C., just like they did in every single country in the world, even island nations that have banned guns. And, it's just a simple example, but it's similar to other laws, and that is who were disarmed as a result of the ban. It was basically the most law-abiding good citizens who obeyed the law and turned in their guns, and not the criminals. And to the extent that you disarmed law-abiding citizens relative to criminals, you actually saw increases in murder and violent crime. So, you can go and do something like ban magazines with more than 10 bullets in them. But the problem is that it's trivial for a criminal to go and make another magazine. And the people who you're going to disarm are going to, take those away from them, are going to be law-abiding, good citizens. And so, I'll just give you a simple example. You're talking about these mass public shootings. If you have permanent concealed handguns, which, over 98% of these mass public shootings have taken place in these so-called gun-free zones, the only magazine you're going to have is going to be the one in your gun. You're not going to carry around multiple extra magazines that are there. And so they will be limited to the number of bullets that they have. But the person who's going to be going into a mall or to a movie theater or wherever to go and kill lots of people, they're going to bring in, like the Aurora Batman movie theater shooter did, 30 magazines with them. And so, the only people that you've kind of restricted relative to the kill there are going to be the law-abiding citizens. They're
Right.
not going to be as able to go and stop the person as the person who's trying to commit the crime.
He is John Lott Jr., president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, author of a number of books, including The War on Guns and More Guns, Less Crime. John Lott Jr., thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.